Hello, everybody. Wherever, whenever, and however you're listening, thanks for tuning in. I'm Kevin Kitchin, and this is Transparency, unscripted and unbiased, coming from a shared studio in beautiful downtown Waterville, Maine. Tonight, we are going to continue our conversation on a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and something that we've got a problem with here in the state of Maine, and that is drugs. One of the things on my platform is interdiction, intervention, prevention, and treatment of drugs. And with me tonight is Donald, who has experienced a little bit of all of that in his life, and Karen, who everybody knows is my campaign manager and treasurer, and is also been in this field for almost all of her career. Thank you, Karen, once again for coming in and lining up this chat with Donald. And Donald, thanks for coming in.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm an individual who has experienced substance use disorder throughout my life since about the age 10. Also a person who has experienced the criminal justice system and have recently been released from long-term incarceration. As far as what you're looking for, a little bit about myself, are we speaking from my younger childhood years or today?
I think you just touched on it, really. Just a basic. When you say long-term incarceration, what is long-term incarceration?
So I think it varies in different states. Some states could be people who have been sentenced to 7 or more years. Some are 10 or more. I have just finished up a sentence, or currently finish up a sentence of 8.5 years, where I did nearly 6 years incarcerated. And currently I'm out on a program in the state called Supervised Community Confinement Program, which is something that allows individuals, residents of the Department of Corrections, to finish up their sentences in the community. And it's really designed to help reintegrate back into society at a slower rate than just being released, because the norm is getting out with $50 gate money and really being tossed back into the community.
What do you mean by $50 gate money?
So within the system, individuals who have been incarcerated are given a $50 cash and usually a Goodwill voucher. And
right.
Those are the things that the system, so to speak, gives people and expects them to flourish in life. So my view and opinion of that is we're not equipping individuals who are experiencing incarceration to transition into society and become successful. We're really setting people up to just have nothing when they get released.
Right. So that's where you're at now. Let's take a step back a couple years and let's talk about what got you started. In one of the last podcasts I did, I had a gentleman on that got started as early as 13 when he was in an accident with opioids, which led to drug abuse. And we talked a little bit about the treatment, the prevention, the intervention aspect of it. But we really didn't touch on the criminal justice portion. And I'm interested in that because it's a big part of getting people help and keeping them sober and clean. But for me, in wanting to help people, kind of have to understand the story of where it all starts, because I think, like anything else, it's a process from the beginning. Somebody just doesn't wake up and say, I'm a drug addict, do they?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't ever recall as a kid saying, I can't wait to, be addicted to heroin and cocaine and, ruin my life and affect the people that care about me. So, Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's any one thing that I can point to. It's really just I think a series of events in life. I think socioeconomic status plays roles in that. I grew up in the poverty level. My father, wonderful man. We have a great relationship today, and I adore him. I grew up with him in a single family home, and he wasn't always able to hold down jobs, dropped out of school at a young age, had difficulties reading and writing, those sorts of things. And
Sounds like me.
yeah, there's some things that you can relate to there.
Yeah.
So, growing up for me, I found that.
Where did you grow up at?
I grew up in Augusta.
Okay.
I had to grow up in Augusta. My early childhood years were very traumatic, probably very disturbing for some individuals to hear. Though for me, my reality in life was one that included, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and so on and so forth. So being a child, not being loved and nurtured, you tend to develop.
Look for an out.
Yeah, I think you at that age, when you're young like that, you don't know how to cope and deal. I think for me with my children today, we have those conversations surrounding feelings and emotions and what's going on, but I didn't have those things, and so from a young age, it was a distorted view of the world and of self, and I kind of internalized those things. Probably some people would say that I was a good kid and was happy, but that wasn't the truth for me. I was always full of anxiety and fear, worries, and having the thoughts of people leaving in my life.
Did you get bullied in school?
Yeah, I mean, to today's standards, absolutely.
Yeah, same here, and it was kind of demeaning to me. Sometimes I didn't even feel like I wanted to go to school. And it just, for me, it became I wouldn't say a whirlwind, but it was challenging going to school every day, and kind of like what you're saying with the social impacts back when we were kids, on how much that can impact what you're doing next in the day type of thing.
Yeah, I think that's, I can connect with you there, because my experience is at that age where ones of, my emotions was, confusion and, fear and sadness and sorrow. And, that wasn't an outlet for me. School wasn't an outlet for me. I often wondered what was wrong with me, why people didn't like me, picked on because, I didn't have the latest fashion or, the certain sneakers or those sorts of things, And so it was a really traumatic experience. School was not fun for me. And on top of moving around constantly in life, going back and forth between Augusta, living with my dad, or we'd end up at my grandmother's house most often. So I never had, what I know today is that I never had stability and security in my life.
Right.
And, those are things that, help children develop, having safety in their lives and feeling secure helps them develop, and gain some self-worth and some self-respect, feeling safe. And though I just didn't feel safe growing up. I didn't feel safe at home. I didn't feel safe at school. And when I say at home, I don't mean with my dad. My dad was not an individual who I experienced, physical abuse from or those things. So, but, my mother was in some really abusive relationships, and I would have to watch her be physically harmed and, sometimes also sexually. I would be hearing those things.
So you were always on guard.
Yeah,
you didn't
you
have
have
like
to protect yourself.
A safe spot. You didn't have a safe spot as a kid.
Well, I'll take that back. My safe spot was my grandmother's house, but there
Okay.
was also complete chaos there because here's a little old French lady who was, to today's standards, very codependent, and she was the one that took care of the family.
Yeah.
And I felt safe with her, but there was also my grandfather was alcoholic, a World War II vet, and they basically did not get along, and I had an uncle who also lived there with us who was also alcoholic. And so that was like the environment that I grew up in.
Yeah.
So I felt safe around her and at her home. But there was also, things that occurred there that, didn't allow me to feel safe too,
Yeah. So how did you get started on drugs?
Started on drugs for me, I remember being 10 years old. I was always around alcohol. My uncle used to think it would be funny if he would give me little cups of beer.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah, absolutely. That was that was the norm back then,
Take a picture of the kid holding the beer,
Yeah, and not thinking that there's going to be any harm out of it, and I don't believe that, because I had a couple cups of beer when I was a kid that I became an alcoholic or a drug addict. But what happened for me was at around 10 or so, I started babysitting for one of my aunt's friends. And they were around 21, 22 years old. And her and her boyfriend would, go out and party. And, being there with them, it was like the first time that I felt accepted.
Yeah.
And
like a purpose. You had a purpose on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was that I had purpose. It was more for me. It was like I felt wanted.
Yeah.
Being around them, and they came home from the bar one night, and the boyfriend sat on the couch, and they were smoking a joint, and he's like, "Oh, you ever smoke marijuana?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, of course." Of course, that was a complete lie, but I was so full of fear, I couldn't let my guard down and be like, "No, I've never done that." And he passed it to me, and I
Peer
I
pressure's
smoked
not
right
kicking
there.
my ass.
No, hell no, I got this. Let me show you. And they thought it was the greatest thing in the world, that there was a 10-year-old kid at their house smoking a joint with them.
Did you get stoned?
Oh, absolutely.
What was it like the first time you remember?
I just remember, I remember just sitting there and having this big smile on my face and really feeling some ease, a false sense of happiness.
Yeah.
And that's, that was kind of my experience when it came to marijuana. And not long after that, I was drinking also. And so it was almost the reward for babysitting would be them coming home and me being able to drink some liquor and smoke some weed and be a part of something.
Let me ask you a question on that. I was talking to some people, and my question to them was if they thought marijuana was the gateway drug, and they told me that they felt it was alcohol. Alcohol was more of. Would you agree, or do you think it depends?
Yeah, I've thought that. I've had those thoughts and internal conversations with self when it comes to that, and for me, I think that alcohol opened up the door for more things than cannabis ever did. I actually know multiple people in long-term recovery that use medical cannabis as part of their recovery today who are successful.
Okay.
But that's just my opinion and my experience.
Yeah, no,
that's so many people might, a lot of people might not agree with that.
Do you think it maybe has evolved over the last couple of years? Because, I mean, you'll get into it a little bit more, and Donald and I have worked together in the past, but anytime I ran a group in the past, everybody said, marijuana was my gateway drug. And I almost wonder if it was because it was illegal and that people got the fear of using an illegal drug past and then it was built upon, because I mean alcohol is part of our culture and
Yeah.
it's legal. So
I think Donald's from my time as a drug and alcohol program advisor in the Navy, I think it's individually based. I mean, I can talk, like I was talking to Sean and Jeremy, both adamantly agreed that alcohol was the gateway that, Jeremy being alcoholic and Sean being
right.
the addict, both agreed that it was alcohol. But I could see where it's individual because, like you're talking about, there's so much in your life. There's so many different drivers and triggers that's going on. So I could see where it's totally. So I would almost say that when people say such and such is a gateway drug, it's a falsehood because it's individual based. You don't.
Well, I think
know
you're
that.
right. I think you're right with that. And I'm not saying that alcohol doesn't open the door for addiction. I'm talking more of making it okay. I mean, the circles that had marijuana prior to it being legal, I mean, where did you buy it? You bought it on the street, and chances are probably people were selling other things with it.
Yeah.
And I guess that was my point of where I was going.
Yeah. I see what
Like,
you're saying.
you've kind of crossed that, it's kind of like going to jail. The first time, holy cow, this is horrible, it's scary, but it's not that scary after the first, it's more of a nuisance.
Yeah, I think that over the last few years, so I was incarcerated during the whole legalization of recreational cannabis, though I think like most things that once it kind of comes out of the darkness and becomes more or desensitized or destigmatized is the word I'm looking for. It allows people to really, I think, be who they are. Because of that, I think fear gets in the way of so many things. And now if the
Fear meaning?
I mean, just fear in general, but if we're going to just talk about it in, say, the recovery world, there's 12-step programs that will say, if you're on any mood or mind-altering drug, you're not in recovery.
Right.
And, that is not of my belief, system, though it works for people. It's the way that I got sober and into recovery, and it's still a process that I use today, but I always allow individuals that I sponsor or work with to, I empower them to be who they are.
Right.
And so I just think that if an individual was using heroin and their life was completely unmanageable and, it brought them to really dark places, and today they're smoking cannabis and they're living life with purpose and meaning, and it's fulfilling to them, I see absolutely nothing wrong with
who's
that.
to say, right?
Right. And so I think what was going on and does go on is that there's fear created because of the fear of maybe rejection or being judged by other individuals, because if they're smoking cannabis and other people are not, it's like, how are they going to view me? And if I've created a community around me, and then there's that fear of losing that or being judged or looked at differently. And so I think it is all dependent upon the freedom that each individual has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's what was your first drug?
So my first drug to me, I guess, would have been, LSD and mushrooms. Those were, drugs. Now we're, talking a whole nother thing, because now they're starting to look at the medical properties of, certain substances today. But
Mushrooms.
yeah, and there's
Psychedelic
some
mushrooms.
extremely promising results that are coming from all of that. But so for me, my first hard drug would have been cocaine. And
How old were you?
I'm not sure, maybe around 15, 14 or 15. I remember doing lines, and then I remember a guy came over to my house and was freebasing, was smoking it. And I went down in the basement with them because he didn't have anything not to smoke out of, and asked me if I had a bowl, and I brought it down and took a couple of hits. But it was very a short-lived experience.
Yeah.
And then
The
around
high, the
Yeah.
high or the cocaine.
No, just the cocaine, because it wasn't something that that I did.
Right.
You know, because even my view back then it was of, people were junkies and those sorts of things. So even in the chaos and the mayhem that I lived in, there was still like a hierarchy. I can do certain things and commit crimes or drink or smoke marijuana or but if I didn't use cocaine, like, I was better than you.
Right.
You know?
Gotcha. Yeah. What? So let's walk through the process. So from cocaine to more illicit drugs, or I mean, what got you hooked? What made you become an addict?
So I became addicted in 2019 to opiates, mainly heroin. And for me, it was a couple of really traumatic experiences. I had one, my grandmother had passed away.
Right.
This was in 2000, and I was going through a breakup with my son's mom at that time, and that breakup was really due to alcohol use and behaviors that came from that, and also being on benzodiazepines, clozapines, and I had blacked out, and she had gone to work. And when she came home, I had still been in the bed, and my oldest son had been in the crib all day, and I didn't tend to him. So she had had enough and was, said, it's time for you to go. So at that point, my safe spot, my security blanket, so to speak, was no longer there. And I found myself being extremely vulnerable at that moment, and not really knowing what to do and having that person in my life anymore. And so I moved back to Augusta. I had been living out in West Gardner at the time, and I moved back, and, the people that I had grown up with and hung out with in life had all transitioned into being, hard drug users. And I remember having a conversation with this guy probably 2 months prior to the night that I saw him. I had stopped by the house, and, I was, really hard on him. I was like, look at you, you're all junked out. You look like shit. What the fuck's
Right.
wrong with you? Get your shit together. I'm not going to be around you until you can do something different. And I found myself going back to those same individuals during that time in my life. And what happened for me, man, it was I asked them to, give me some heroin, and, they loaded it up in a syringe, and I turned my head, and because I couldn't stand needles at that point, and, he shot me up with heroin, and that brought me onto really into a good 2-year addiction at that point.
Okay. At that, what do you? Is there anything at that point that would have helped prevent that? Is there something? Looking back at that, just before the needle and leaving, could have helped, because I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that are, I mean, they cross. I would say I don't want to say cross that threshold, but there's that point in their life where if something was there available to them, would it have helped? Is there something that we can do to help the people that are right before, I mean, the prevention. How can we, or intervention, or how can we?
I've been asked similar questions. You know, I was asked years ago if there was something that could have been offered to me when I was a juvenile, if it would have kept me out of the adult criminal justice system.
Right. Yeah.
And my answer was no. And it was no because I was so entrenched in that type of lifestyle that you couldn't have told me anything different.
Yeah.
I was unwilling to listen.
Plus, you're a teenager,
and I'm a teenager on top of it.
We all know
I already
everything.
knew it. Yeah, I already knew everything in the world. You know, so you weren't telling me shit at that time.
Yeah.
I don't think that there was anything that could have stopped that or could have prevented it per se. You know, I don't think there's any program, so to speak, that can stop something in that moment. And I say that because I used because of pain and trauma in my life.
right?
And I didn't know how to identify those things. I didn't know how to express them, talk about them. I never had any of that. You know, I didn't have connection like that with individuals to help model talking about, you know, those types of things that hurt, that pain, you know. And I think back then it was a lot more difficult, right? Because I think we come from a generation then of, you know, boys don't cry and
suck it up,
that type of shit.
Yeah.
And so I don't think so at that moment, you know. And I don't say that to create any sort of hopelessness for anybody that may be listening or people that are trying to come up with ways to prevent.
But it's reality.
But it is to me, it's the reality. Yes. Yeah. You know, I don't think there was. So I believe that substance use for me and for most of the individuals that I've worked with and mentored or sponsored, it always goes back to trauma.
Yeah.
That's been my experience at this point in life, and I've been at it for, you know, over 20 years now. And I believe that it's important to get to the root of that trauma.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know where that gets implemented in society or our communities.
I would say, people haven't been to a therapist myself, you know. We have to want help. First, we have to want it, because with trauma, I would say with trauma, for me, it's like, I don't want to open those wounds again and talk about it with a complete stranger, a therapist or whatever. So maybe I'm not ready for it yet. So
I think weighing in on that. I mean, I always like the saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But you can certainly make them thirsty.
Yeah.
You can show them a different way. You can give them, you know, opportunities to know that they're cared about. I mean, Donald can attest to the fact that there were a lot of us that cared about him, and not just me. He and I go back a long way. But I mean, these are things that create bonds in life. And I think that just being a good human and letting people know that, you know, this doesn't have to define you.
Yeah, I think it's so complex, and sometimes it's approached one-dimensional, you know, because there's not a single person that I've been involved with that has experience with substance use disorder that's been like, man, I love this, you know, maybe for a short time when it's, you know, in that little fun stage, but most everyone that I've ever been involved with has wanted to do something different. I believe at the core of their being, they want something different. And I know that was the case for me. But you're dealing with, a two-headed monster. I might want something different, but once I cross that threshold of being, emotionally, mentally, and physically dependent on a substance, that changes the whole ball game at that point because of the, fear of detox, the really inability to rationalize and make choices and decisions.
It's changing your brain chemistry.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Could you feel that during the process?
Well, I know that for me, it, I can't say that I have this physiological experience of it changing my brain chemistry, but I know that my thinking changes, my personality changes, the choices and the decisions I make change, and so I see that and I know it, and then it could become very heavy for me because my past experience has been that being in recovery for many years and then relapsing and going back out, the guilt and the shame that's that I had worn was really difficult for me to escape because I would sit there and continuously tell myself like, you know better, like you know what you need to do, and then I can be very brutal to myself in that moment and, start talking down on myself, calling myself all kinds of names and, starting to feel very worthless.
Proverbial downward spiral.
Absolutely. And what I've come to understand is, what it does do to our bodies, once that craving starts within our thought process in our mind and the physical dependency comes, those I'm using to really wave off a craving at that point. Like I have to do this. And sometimes it's very difficult for people to understand that, some of my favorite literature from 12-step programs, talks about losing the power of choice at that point. So I no longer have the power to choose whether I'm going to use or not because
it's
I have
dictating,
to.
Yeah.
Right. I have to at that point, and it's what's normal.
What'd you do for work during this whole?
Oh, well, I mean,
how did you get the drugs?
So from a young age, I had got involved with selling marijuana. I started doing that somewhere around 12 years old.
Wow.
And so what I knew to get money was to sell substances. And, I trafficked substances for many years.
What do you mean by substances?
Well, pretty much anything that was going to make money, mainly, though, illegal drugs.
Okay.
Heroin, cocaine, pharmaceuticals, marijuana.
And how old were you when you were doing this?
When
you started, I guess.
So I sold marijuana throughout my teenage years, and then around.
And how old are you now?
I'm going to be 41.
Okay.
But I had somewhere around 20 is when I started to traffic substances. Because it paid for my habit at that point in life.
Okay.
It's really difficult to maintain an addiction.
So somebody like me, what do you mean by traffic? I don't understand that. I don't.
So trafficking substances for me is,
because the law says one thing, but a drug trafficker, I would assume is different. I don't.
So I think if we go by law, it's if I'm giving any individual, if I'm selling any type of illegal substance to another person,
right,
then I would be Trafficking.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So you were trafficking.
Yes.
Where did you get it from?
That's the thing for me. I always tend to find people that had large quantities, and if it wasn't around, I would, either send people out of state or go out of state myself.
Okay.
But I was never one to really like to do that because it was always the chances for me to get caught were a lot higher if I was going to be traveling across state lines to,
Right.
purchase and come back and sell substances. So,
But you would make more money if you did that, I would assume.
I mean, yeah, you could make more money. But back then it was easy to know people that were from out of state that were willing to come here.
Gotcha.
Was that scary? I'm sitting here going, how do you get drugs from people to sell, and then they're expecting money from you? Is it like what we see on TV? Do they come looking for you, or do they?
I mean, yeah, if you're ripping people off and you owe them a large amount of money for narcotics, they will tend to come look for you. I never really had that experience for me. It wasn't like that for me. But is it scary? Yeah, I mean, back then I wouldn't have told you that, but today, yeah, I mean, I lived in constant fear and paranoia of, the potential of, people coming or trying to rob you or rip you off, the law coming, there isn't much safety and security in selling drugs, I'll
No.
tell you that
No.
right now. Yeah, so, yeah, it's absolutely scary.
Was there a lot of money?
There was a lot of money. There was a lot of money. Every few days you can, bring in thousands of dollars. I was using $1,000 a day worth of substances.
You were $1,000 a day.
Yeah, myself. And so, and on top
Shit.
of that, making, enough money to do whatever I needed to do with,
Yeah.
So there is a lot of money. And, I think for me, another part of it is now today knowing who I am as a person, going all the way back to not feeling as though I had control in my life throughout, my adolescence years into my teenage years, not feeling as though I was a part of anything or having any type of power in my life, selling substances was also addicting because it brought validation, it brought
A purpose.
it brought purpose, it brought connection.
Probably some power too.
It brought power, it brought control, absolutely. So all those things also played a part in it. It wasn't just about the money. It wasn't just about using, because I sold drugs also when I wasn't using, so because I maintained, work, I worked for a company for, close to 9 years, while I still sold drugs on the side, because, I could go and work for, 80 hours and bring home, a few $100s, or I could do that on the side and, make thousands,
Yeah.
though none of that ever lasted,
We were talking before with some other guests about and I use the word probably too much, but it's stigma. The stigma of an addict when you were dealing, can I say dealing? I guess
Yeah, absolutely. Let's
When
call
you were-
it what it is.
when you were
No.
dealing, could you tell as a dealer? Could you spot somebody a mile away that was using? Because the stigma for a lot of people is they're homeless people, they're this or that. Or did you see some average Joes in there, or some
Yeah, I think there's that perception that you have to look a certain way to be either an addict or a dealer or some of those things.
the Hollywood?
Yeah, I mean, I
version?
remember when there was the big rise in pharmaceuticals and OxyContins were thriving. I know grandmothers that became drug dealers.
Really?
Oh
Oh shit!
Yeah. you know, it was a great way for them to supplement their income. You know, they didn't have much. And
Yeah.
so you know, you got people that are sitting on gold mines back then.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, I don't think it's yeah, there is that stigma, and you just don't know. You just don't know.
So
I'm just curious because I'm sitting here and he knows me that I just ask, how expensive are drugs on the street right now? Like I wouldn't know what a bag of heroin is or
I don't even
how much
know-
is a.
I don't even know what a bag of heroin is.
Yeah. So, from my understanding right now, because I've been removed for
Right.
many years, and you know,
Removed, incarcerated.
removed, incarcerated, and also from being in recovery. So, I personally haven't seen drugs at all since I've been
Good for you.
since
man.
I love
I've been
that.
out. And
Awesome.
but my understanding now, because I am involved with people who
You're sponsoring people.
yeah, so from my understanding right now, you know, because it's really no longer heroin that's available, it's fentanyl, and my understanding it's extremely cheap
Yeah.
out there right now. So what used to be extremely expensive is not that anymore.
Yeah.
And extremely deadly now too.
Yes.
Fentanyl. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, while I was incarcerated, I lost so many people that I lost count.
Okay.
I was going to say because I'm thinking about the programming that we did and how many people we lost.
So, in our next segment, part 2, we're going to talk about incarceration, the criminal justice system, and what you experienced there. But before we close out this episode on using, as somebody for me that I have the give a shit factor, I really care about people. Politics aside, if you had a magic wand based off of anything, or you could walk arm in arm with me to the State House and fix something when it comes to that, what do you think that could be? Where do you think you and I could start to make a difference for people?
Well, I think, you know, making a difference for people, my perspective today is being able to make those connections, right? So I think what can happen is people or society, you know, judges or has, you know, moralistic judgments or people being bad. And so these things block us from humanity.
Yeah.
And so my experience has been that connection heals. And I think that in order to do that, there has to be more availability for treatment and opportunities for maybe sober living and policy changes on how we approach this today. And I'm starting to see it. There's been a pretty big movement. There's been some changes today. I know multiple people that are highly involved in advocacy work who trample the State House on a regular basis.
Right.
You know, but I think it has to be treatment. And I don't mean treatment as in like, hey, we're just going to go stick them in a hospital or I just think that it's about that connection and truly being able to look a person in the eyes and tell them like I understand, like I feel you, you know, let's do this together.
Because everybody's story is a little bit different.
Absolutely.
It could be spiritual, it could be emotional, it could be whatever, you know, just like veterans homes type of thing. You know, we all get together and we find that thing that keeps us ticking or that we connect to.
Yeah, I think we just have to come together as a community.
Yeah.
And I if I had the answer, we would have already waved that wand.
Yeah, but it's good.
know?
it's good. It's like the big jigsaw puzzle. You know, you got to start with the edge pieces first, and you have to
Absolutely.
understand it before you start putting all the pieces together. And I'll be the first to tell anybody, I don't. If I don't know, I don't know. But I know that there's a problem, and I know that we can do something to help. Will we ever solve it? Who knows? If we help one person, it's worth it. I had gone into this campaign saying that interdiction, and we'll talk about that a little bit with the law enforcement coming up on the next episode, but intervention, prevention, and then treatment. You know, in the military, it was, we just don't jump to treatment. So I'm very, I don't want to say adamant, but I'm very open-eared into listening on what we can do for that intervention. That's why I was kind of asking about the intervention, the prevention piece, to hopefully, if we focus on that, the goal is to get less people in treatment. Let's just call it how it is. That's the goal, is to get less people in treatment. But I agree, it's a reoccurring theme in this state that we don't have the treatment that we have. Politics aside, whatever party somebody is on, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Independent, whatever the case may be, you know, it doesn't matter. We just need to get to the root of the problem to fix that.
Yeah, I think for me, I just think it starts with community.
Yeah.
I believe that, you know, just having purpose and meaning in life has changed everything for me. You know, I'm a father of 5 children, from, 25 to 16. And, they say that, those individuals will be, those kids will be more prone to, addiction and mental health issues and those sorts of things. And all of them have purpose and meaning in life today.
Yeah.
And I think that, those things are
because
there
you're
because
giving
of
it to
conversations.
them. You're giving
right,
it to them. You're talking to them about it.
I can have a conversation with my 16-year-old son that is so honest and vulnerable and intimate that it's fulfilling to have a conversation with him. I know 50-year-old men that I can't have the level of communication with. And so
it probably drives you too.
Oh, of course it does. Of course it does. And I know that it also, it drives them. It's rewarding. And so when I say community, it's like, where does that start? Because it looks so different in so many areas, right? Is it within the homes? Is it within our neighborhoods? Is it in our town, cities, state? What does that look like? Because it's so broad, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's about connection, and I think it's easy to want to look for a program to treat or to make a difference. And my experience up to this point is like, if I can sit with an individual and connect with them through emotions and needs, through their feelings, it makes a difference.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference. And so, how do we go about that? And what I do know is, you're running for Senate, and, are you going to be able to maintain that position and still be connected to the people? And I think that can be difficult, for a lot of people. We get into different positions, take on new jobs, or we have agendas and things that we need to do. I don't believe that, individuals are sitting at the State House right now are going to be the ones that make the difference. Now, they can, because they have the power to change policies. And so I believe it's we the people that have to come together and be heard and have a voice, and we need the platform for that.
Okay.
And I think when you go through substance use or you go through traumatic experiences throughout life, if you go through incarceration, more likely than not, you've been silenced. Whether it's through a system or through, a mental process as an individual, whether it's through your family, whatever it is, we're used to not being heard. And sometimes individuals don't know that they have a voice. And so platforms to be heard, for me, are so important.
Okay. We'll have to figure that out. And I don't know. I don't know the answer. And
But that's why you're learning. That's why you're talking.
yeah, I want
conversation.
I want to be a part of the solution. I don't want to sit home and bitch about shit and do nothing about it. if it's something that's near and dear to me, I haven't met you until today, but your story is very empowering to me, and it gives me drive to get out there. And am I going to change? I don't know if that's what you were insinuating. Am I going to change? Hell no, I'm not going to change. I did. Looking back on my military career, I did 30 years. I didn't change. I didn't change for anybody. I was like, if people don't like me for who I am, the hell with them. I don't need to be here. One of the things, I'm not a politician. I'm an average guy that wants to help. I want to help and bring some common sense to help, people that need, regardless of the program or what it is. And then if I'm able to connect and have these conversations with a complete stranger like you and I are, I look forward to the next 2 years when I'm in the Senate to talking to people. I mean, our sessions are very short. My deployments are longer than the Senate sessions, but there's a lot that can be done during those periods where we move forward on this stuff and we lock elbows and we go and we work on it. That's how important it is to me is to get there and figure it out. I could be completely wrong in what I'm thinking about intervention and prevention. I could be completely wrong, and I have no problem saying, you know what, I need to adjust my platform based off the people I've talked to in my community. Maybe we really do need to focus on treatment. Maybe we really do need to focus on treatment. But I also feel strongly about interdiction, about how we can help our law enforcement, train, equipping them to allow them to do their jobs, to hopefully prevent so much from coming across the border. And that's what I want to talk to you about next is kind of the criminal justice, the law enforcement, incarceration, how that goes, and leading into your treatment and what you're dealing with now. So if you'll stick around, we'll wrap this one up, and we'll take a break, and we'll come back and we'll talk about incarceration, criminal justice system. All right. Thanks.
Yeah.